The voice of the drum calls. It sings a song of those who came before us and those to come. A song of survival and strength. A song of participation and voice. A song that calls us together. When we come together and participate in the 2010 census, we use this tool as the voice of all our Native people. Our voice. It is in our hands. 2010 census.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Kimberly Acosta. Welcome to the Native News Update on Thursday, April 15th. Many of the stories you hear here can be found at our website, IndianCountryNews.com. And here's the news for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. A well-known Native American architect and artist in the Valley in Phoenix, Arizona was killed when he was hit by a car. Dennis Numkina was 68 years old. He designed award-winning buildings in Arizona and in Nevada. Numkina's artwork is in private and corporate collections all over the world. According to police, Numkina died after he was hit by a car on April 11th. All indications are that his death was an accident. Police say the driver stopped and called for help after he hit him. A private funeral service will take place for Numkina in his home village on the Hopi Indian Reservation. After 3 decades, it took only a few hours to seat a jury. On April 14th, opening arguments began in the murder trial for Dick Marshall, who was accused in the death of Native American activist Anime Pictou Aquash in 1975. We are joined today with journalist Paul Demain, who is in Rapid City, South Dakota for the trial. Will you give us an update on what's going on at the trial over there in Rapid City, South Dakota?
The jury was selected yesterday, which was April 14th on a Wednesday during the morning, and then both the prosecution and the defense had their opening statements. So Robert Mandel and Rod Oswald opened up, and the defense made their opening statement as well on behalf of Richard Dick Marshall. It was interesting that in the opening statements, the case against Dick Marshall is very consistent. That is same as it was against Arlo in the year 2004, that members of the American Indian Movement picked up Anime in Denver, Colorado. She was placed into custody there, driven to Rapid City, South Dakota, then later on taken to the Rosebud Reservation. And during those last few hours, she was taken out and executed. The 3 people that were named are John Boy Patton Graham, Arla Looking Cloud, who's already been convicted, and Theda Nelson Clark. In the opening statements, the defense did not contest any of that. In fact, at this point, the trial seems to be going along much, much faster than people had expected, in part because the defense is not arguing with the basic outline of the case. That is that Dana Hanna has basically conceded that Anime Pictou Aquash was picked up by members of the American Indian Movement, kidnapped, transported in custody and tied up to South Dakota and out to the Pine Ridge Reservation, where she was then executed. And essentially, Hanna has said these 3 individuals were responsible for that, where the case has a conflict on behalf of his client, Dick Marshall, is he's simply saying that when these 3 people with Anime Pictou Aquash came to Dick Marshall's house that night, they were looking for directions, and they wanted Anime to change into a new pair of clothes, and that his client had nothing to do with providing a gun to the trio. And so when that's your argument, all the other elements have become uncontested. Now, yesterday they had 3 people testify.
Who all testified?
Attorney Robert Ryder, who was Anime's attorney in 1975, who testified about a letter that he wrote in which the government offered Anime Aquash a deal, a dropping of all the charges to a misdemeanor in 1975 in return for cooperation and her testimony. That Ryder testified that he prepared that letter and offered to Anime and sent 2 copies to her to 2 different addresses. But the interesting thing that he testified to was that attorney Bruce Ellison was helping him on that case. And with Attorney Ellison having access to that letter offer to the government, it's been alleged in the past that he waved that letter around in front of Anna Mae on around December 10th or 11th, 1975, and says, here, there's a deal in the works for you in return for your testimony. And so it'll be interesting to see if that comes up again in the near future in regards to the involvement of Attorney Bruce Ellison in this case. So Ryder testified to that. Roy Henboy talked about him and his wife taking Anna Mae from Pierre, South Dakota to Denver, Colorado. And Angie Begay testified about the phone call from Thelma Rios to her, which was then conveyed to John Graham that they needed to pick up Anna Mae Piktuakwash. So John Graham was told that they needed to bring Anna Mae in custody, and she was brought into custody at Troyland Yellowwoods. Now today they've had two witnesses so far. The first witness was Troyland Yellowwood, who testified that Anna Mae did come to her house and that she was taken into custody, but she went voluntarily. Angie Begay yesterday testified that Anna Mae was tied up. And the witness after Troyland Yellowwood was George Palfy, who testified that he was at the house, at Troyland Yellowwood's house in Denver, Colorado, when Theda Nelson Clark tied Anna Mae up. So the question that'll leave in minds is if Troyland's house, why she's been testifying that Anna Mae wasn't tied up, but you have two other people who were there when Anna Mae was there and saw her tied up as well. This afternoon, Candy Hamilton is testifying, and she'll be talking about when this trio, John Boy Graham, Theda Nelson Clark, and Arlo Looking Cloud, brought Anna Mae to the Wickeldock office, and where she was then interrogated allegedly by Clyde Belcourt, Bruce Ellison, Madonna Gilbert, Lorelei DeCory, and several other people while she was there at the Wickeldock office of Attorney Bruce Ellison. And the question may be is, was she still tied up there? Because essentially it would make those people aiders and abettors in this murder case as well. So what's interesting is we've got more on the record than we've ever before. In fact, I don't believe that there seems to be people, even within the American Indian movement, that are denying that this wasn't a kidnapping and murder committed by members of the American Indian movement. They seem to be pointing fingers at each other. It's Dick Marshall that's saying, I had nothing to do with that gun. Arlo or John or someone else provided it to him, but I did not provide it. That's going to be his defense. And expected to go on the stand later today or tomorrow will be Arlo Looking Cloud, who allegedly is going to say that when they went to Dick Marshall's house, that Dick Marshall did provide a shell and gun to them that was later used to execute Anna Mae Piktuakwash.
What else do we have to look forward to in the next week during the trial? Any surprised people that are going to be on the stand? Or
no, I don't believe there's going to be any surprises. In the federal court process, it's pretty open. We're expecting to see people like Mathaleen White Bear, Richard Tuelk, perhaps John Trudell, Kamuk Nichols, who is Kamuk Banks, Dennis Banks' ex-wife, who's now Kamuk Ekefie, or Darlene Ekefie. She's married to Robert Ekefie. It seems like the federal prosecutors are taking the case through a sequential chronology this time. During Arlo Looking Cloud's 2004 trial, it seemed a little bit haphazard, but what we've seen from the writer, attorney Ryder, talking about what happened in Pierre, South Dakota, then Anna Mae being transported to Denver, what's going on in Denver, and now we're in that time frame when Anna Mae, Rapid City, South Dakota. It doesn't appear that there's any other elements outside of that having to do with her informant status. That was certainly put on the record in the year 2004, and the involvement of Peltier. Peltier's interrogation, Peltier's bragging to several AIM women that he had shot the agents, including Anna Mae and Kamuk Nichols, and those things are all part of the public record. And I think they're going to be a little bit tighter, but what essentially today's trial has so far left me with the opinion that right at the moment you've got numerous members of the American Indian movement that are pointing to John Graham and Arlo Looking Cloud and Theda Nelson Clark as the culprits in this case and are testifying against them about their presence and where they were and the fact that Anna Mae was tied up. So that's not going to do very much good for John Graham's upcoming trial or Thelma Rios' trial this July 6th, when they're due to stand trial on aiding and abetting as well. Of course, John Graham is accused of being the trigger person. So I think we'll focus on Arlo Looking Cloud and his testimony and why he's saying what he's saying now.
Well, thank you for joining us today. And that's the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. I'd like to thank you for joining me, and have a grand day.